Our apologies to everyone. Unfortunately, our Facebook Live event is not working, so we're going to go ahead and do a recording of the presentation and post it on the Facebook page. Um, First of all, I want to talk about what we're going to be talking about tonight. Number one, we're going to talk about 10 reasons why teens use, 10 plus reasons, I should say. We're going to talk about teens and their brains. We're going to have a kind of a signs and symptoms checklist, 10 strategies for parents, 6 parenting practices, and 3 musts for parents, along with 5 reasons why teens don't use. So we're going to give you some strategies along the way, along with providing some tools that may be beneficial for you as a parent to help you that can guide you in the right direction as well. So first of all, let's talk about why teens use in the first place. Well, according to the Partnership for Drug-Free America, one of the first reasons why teens use is to relieve boredom. We know a lot of times teens are bored and they want things to do, and they feel that using alcohol, marijuana, vaping, and other products will help them to get rid of that boredom. Secondly, it feels good. A recent study done in 2015-2016 for the Bay County, Michigan Profile for Healthy Youth showed that about 30% of students felt sad or depressed on 2 or more days a week, which means that we have a lot of young people that are dealing with some mental health issues, and a lot of times they will use marijuana thinking it's going to make them feel better, or they use alcohol to escape what's going on there and want them to feel better. However, we know that based upon the research that actually does the exact opposite, can actually make them feel worse. They may have a good short-term thing, but the down can even worse over time as continue moving on. Thirdly, want to forget their troubles, or they want to relax. Forgetting their troubles, there's a lot of young people out there that are dealing with what are called adverse childhood experiences. Adverse childhood experiences are things that people end up dealing with in their lifetime. Some of it is passed along genetically through epigenetics, as we talked about in our Safe Journey video, but we want to forget their lives, whether it's a boyfriend issue, a girlfriend issue, teachers, school. There is so much stress with teens nowadays that a lot of people don't realize all the different things that they're dealing with, and a lot of times they don't have an outlet to deal with those. So that would be one of the other reasons. A lot of times also I hear people say they want to lower or relax. Think about that. How many teenagers are on their phones almost all the time? A lot of the research we're looking at now as far as brain development as well as relaxation is when you have that LED light, that light emitting diode, it makes it more difficult for them to relax. So in turn they have lack of sleep. So a lot of times I will tell students to put their phone upside down so you can't see it, or don't even have it by the phone by your bed, because a lot of times they'll use it for their alarm. So that's why I tell them to turn it upside down, because the light emitting diodes will actually make it more difficult. So if teenagers using alcohol and drugs to deal with forgetting their troubles, which in turn, as I said earlier, and as well as trying to lower their stress, because stress is so large for them compared to what we can even imagine. Think about the stress you have at your job, the stuff you have at work, stress you have as a parent. Now multiply that by 100, and I think you're getting close to what we're looking at as far as the issues with parents. Fourthly, teens like to satisfy their curiosity. Teens like sometimes to use because they want to know what it's going to do to them. They may have heard this information, whether it's from an educator such as myself, or a teacher in a school, another parent, or even another student, or even a parent that is a user themselves, and they want to experience those things. 5, they want to ease pain. I talked a bit about emotional pain, we're talking about forgetting trouble, but there is also physical pain. There are some people that are dealing with physical pain, and they will use those substances for a short-term thing. As an example, if you look at prescription pain relievers, a lot of times people use those thinking it's going to be the best thing for them on the long term, but in the short term it can be beneficial. And it's also being monitored by the doctor and things like that, but in the long term it doesn't do the benefits you want it to do. 6, teens want to feel grown up. They want to look like they're adults. They want to feel as though they're something. And because they want to feel they're grown up and they're adults, they make decisions that can affect them as adults. Unfortunately, when they're under the influence of alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, and other substances, a lot of times they aren't thinking, they're just doing. So a lot of times teens will use it because they want to feel grown up and they want to exert that independence. Sometimes they want to belong to a specific group. They want to fit in. They want to belong to something. Whether it's the popular group, whether it's a sport group, whether it's a group that they don't even that isn't one of those two. There's many different groups in the schools and in the teen population that end up having multiple things going on. So maybe they want to be involved in those groups, and the only way to get in those groups sometimes they believe or think, or maybe that's what they've been told, is to use alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, vaping, inhalants, opiates, whatever that drug may be to help them feel better. This is one, number 9, that I hear all the time. Teens tell me, well, it's more fun. Well, I have a question for those teens, and I have a question for you as a parent to think about this teen. If something's fun and you want to make it funner or better, how can you do that? I mean, if you're having fun, isn't fun what you're trying to do? So add it to a celebration. Now think about it as we as adults and the role models we are sometimes, and how we aren't always the best role models. Think about what you as a parent or even other adult out there, when you're having a function, is alcohol or other substances the focus? Is it there? Is there alternatives? Those are kinds of different things. So they start to learn those things, and they learn about the celebration from other parents, other kids, their parents sometimes. As an example, a lot of people always get amazed by this one. How many of you know of a time where somebody had a kegger baby shower? There are baby showers that are keggers, believe it or not. And with the legalization of marijuana and other things, unfortunately, that may be something similar to what we may see down the road. We don't know yet, but however, depending on the culture and the change and things like that, that is something that could occur. Fitting in, we already talked about. Social pressure. There's a social pressure out there that using alcohol and drugs is natural and normal. Watch any Super Bowl commercial that involves alcohol, or any commercial that involves substances, or any movie that involves substances, and it kind of tells the kids, it's something you need to do. It's part of growing up. And within that social pressure, if they see one person doing it, maybe. But if they see 2 and 3 people doing it, they start to believe that, yeah, I'm kind of the oddball out here. And, do I want to be that oddball out? So that's another thing we're looking at, the social pressure. Sometimes, number 12, it's misinformation. There's a lot of information out there that's misinformation, whether it's about alcohol, whether it's about marijuana, whether it's about vaping, whether it's about tobacco, whatever that is. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And because there's misinformation out there, a lot of people will make a decision based upon information that isn't true. There's a lot of things on the internet. Anything could be on the internet. It says I'm a French model, parle du français. Really, I'm not. But the point is that anybody can believe something if they hear it long enough and believe it long enough. So if you tell somebody something more and more and more, they start to believe it. So example, George Washington chopped down the cherry tree, right? No, that's actually a myth. People start to believe that because it's been repeated over time. And if there's a misinformation that's given out there more and more and more, people start to believe that, even though it may not seem healthy, even though it may seem counterintuitive to what they really believe and what they know and what they've seen. Those are different things. There are some teens that lack confidence. They lack the ability to resist pressure. They don't know that there's refusal strategies, that they can have a strategy. Yeah, I said strategy. I didn't say just refusal tactics. I said a strategy. I believe it's a strategy because they need a plan. Without that plan of what they're going to do when things happen, it makes it easier to fall into something. I use the analogy of a basketball team. If you're a basketball team and you don't come up with a strategy and you're playing against one of the better teams, and you go out there and just play, and you don't know what you're going to do, people run into each other, things will be all over the place, and you'll probably end up not doing as well as you would have if you had a strategy. No Super Bowl team has gone into any game, or no pro team's gone into anything without a strategy to make sure. We do the same thing with strategy within communities, trying to assure that everyone is being productive and efficient and trying to create a community that gets larger and in growing jobs and economics. It's all part of a strategy. So if they're using it for a strategy, why shouldn't the teens use it for a strategy? It seems like a good thing to do. One of the biggest ones that we have in our society today is we live in the fast food generation. Instant gratification. What I mean by instant gratification is that they want to feel good now. When they feel good now and they get whatever's going on in their life isn't going to keep going and they want to get rid of it. And their instant gratification, think about your phones. You hit the internet, it takes a little bit of time to get there. But if you hit an app, you're there automatically. So instant gratification is something a lot of people want. They want things to change now. But they don't realize is that change is a process. Because change is a process, it's going to take time. So everybody do something. Take your hands and go like this. Whatever thumb is on top, I want you to switch it to the other side. If that feels weird and different for you, that means that change is difficult. That also means that instant gratification is something that's probably even easier for those people to have. So that's why I do that little activity there. And there are some that actually want to rebel. They don't want to do what everybody does. And that's a good thing, by the way. Everybody looks at rebellion as being a bad. I think it's a good thing. But it's how you use it. You can use it for productive means, where you change things, you change communities, you change societies, you change schools, cultures that is. You change anything that you can within that when you're looking at the rebellion. Or we're using for destructive. We're rebelling to do something that's going to cause you or somebody else harm. And then we have the media. Think about the music that people listen to. If you look at rock and roll, rap, etc., almost all of it has sex, drugs, and rock and roll in it in some way, shape, or form. So that's a message that they're getting 24/7. Now think about you as a parent or a caregiver. If you're there and you're trying to help them and you're giving these messages and you're doing it once or twice, how effective is that going to be if they're getting these messages from all these different environments all the time? It makes it more difficult for them to resist because they're being bombarded by these things. When they're being bombarded by these things, then in turn it makes it almost impossible to do those. Because they start to believe that, hey, that's the way things go. That's normal. That's society. So it's really important for parents to talk about values and what they believe and things like that. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes here. But let's talk a little bit about signs and symptoms. We're going to talk about behavioral signs along with physical signs. Now, this is kind of a checklist. Now, we're not saying you have to have all these. What we're saying is that if you're seeing these or a big percentage of these, then it could be one of two things. It could be substance use, or it could be some other harmful thing that's going on in their lives, whether it's depression or any kind of issue with suicide, any of those different concerns. We're saying if you're seeing these things, you might want to take a look and actually get them to somebody to help them along the way. Number one, are you seeing change in relationships with their friends and their family members? So are their friends the same friends they had before, or are they changing friends frequently? The family members, when they talk to family members, are they respectful? Are they short? Do they not want to talk? Do they avoid them? Those are the kind of things we're looking at. Also, when we're looking at those things, we have to take a look at, are they having cash flow problems? Okay? Is there money going on? Do they ask for money all the time to help get the money they need to do? Do they tend to avoid eye contact? Do they not want to say anything to you? Do they lock the doors? Do they go to the room, lock the door, and say you have to knock and not let you in? Or, what do you want? What are those things? Do they go out every night? Are they never home? Now, if they're not home because they're doing some things that are helping them to be productive, then that's a whole different discussion. That's some good things going on. But if they are going out every night and they're not home and they're coming home late and they have some red eyes and they have some nasal irritation and things like that, then those are concerns you want to look at. Are they making secretive phone calls? Are there phone calls where to the point where you don't know who it is, or like, Who's on their line? I don't know, just somebody. Nobody. Okay? Are they making endless excuses for everything they're doing? Do they keep saying excuse after excuse after excuse every time you ask them something? You know? Are they exhibiting something loud or obnoxious behavior? Are they not themselves? You as a parent or caregiver know your teenager, your youth better than I do. Are they being loud and obnoxious? That's a concern if they are. Do they laugh apparently at nothing? You know? Do they laugh at the word it or any word that's dumb like that? That when they come home especially, that might be a clue that there's something going on. Do they disappear for long periods of time? Do they seem as though they have some restlessness or high energy followed by long periods of catching up sleep? I remember years ago I had somebody that was always sleeping, and the mom's like, well, she's just tired. Well, it wasn't that this person was just tired. They were doing some drugs. Marijuana was a drug they were using, and it was making it so it would make them tired, and they would continue sleeping all the time from it. So, you know, those are some behavioral signs. Additionally, let's take a look at mood and personality shifts. Do they seem sullen, withdrawn, or depressed? Do they show a loss of inhibitions? Are they silent? Are they uncommunicative? They don't want to talk. You know, I know we can have some boys and guys that do that, but is that consistent? Do they never want to talk? Do they become, when you talk to them about some things, do they become hostile? Do they become angry, uncooperative? Or the exact opposite, do they become very deceitful or secretive? They don't want to tell you what's going on. Yeah, I'm going to her house and I don't know what time I'm going to be back, and you know, you don't even know who she is or he is, and you don't know what the time is. You know, and that's the thing we have to be careful as parents. We can't say, okay, don't be out too late. When you ask a teenager that question, you say that to a teenager, that's coming before the sun comes back out. Okay, you need to be very specific regarding those things. Do they seem less motivated? Do they seem as though they don't really want to do anything anymore? They are more likely to, you know, just sit around and do nothing. Or the exact opposite. They're so hyperactive, they're kind of bouncing off the walls, you know? Are they unusually elated? You know, are they like, all the time, you know, those kind of different things. Now, some of it may be things they already have, and we understand that. But those are some personality and mood change. We're looking at behavioral signs. So let's talk a little bit about some hygiene and appearance issues. Do they smell like smoke? Okay. Do their clothes stink? Now, with vaping, it becomes a little harder now. I understand that. But do they have any vaping products? Do they have any pods? If you don't know what a vape is, we encourage you to attend our presentation on March 26th, and that would be at the McLaren Bay Region Lincoln Center, and that's from 6 to 7:30, and there's free pizza, by the way, just to make you aware of that. And Janine Kravitz, our resident expert, is going to talk to us about that. Do they have messy appearance? I remember about 16, 17 years ago where we had an individual that was in the program. She was a beautiful girl, like a model type looking young lady. And over time she was in the program, she started coming in with sweatshirts that had some stains and things like that. And her hair wasn't done anymore. It seemed as though she didn't care anymore. And the thing is that we had a discussion about it and she got very defensive. So do they have a messy appearance? Do they have poor hygiene? Are they not taking care of themselves? Are they not taking showers and taking care of themselves with deodorant and feminine products and all those kind of different things? Are they not taking care of themselves in a poor hygiene thing? Do they have red, flushed cheeks or a face that's red or flushed? Do they have track marks on their arms or their legs? You know, are they wearing long sleeve shirts in the summer? Are they trying to hide something? Do they have burns or soot on their fingers and fingertips or on their lips or from joints and things like that? Do you see some things that aren't natural and normal to your teenager? You know your teenager better than I do. So remember, think about those things when you're looking at those. And once again, are they unusually tired? If they come home, are they unable to speak intelligently? Do they have slurred speech or a rapid fire? Physically, additionally, Are they having a lot of nosebleeds? Nosebleeds can mean there's another issue, but maybe it's another thing regarding drugs. Do they have a runny nose? I know it's allergy season for a lot of people, and that could be a concern, but is it something that they don't have allergies? They don't have a cold? Something's going on? Something came on all of a sudden? Something that can't be explained? Worst comes to worst, you do some investigation and talk to them and maybe give them to the doctor and find out, and maybe it is something that is actually a normal or a healthy type thing that they're going through to deal with some illness or something. But it's better to be safe than sorry. Do they get sick a lot? Do they frequently have illness and nausea and vomiting and things like that? Do they have sores or spots around their mouth that you're concerned about? You're like, oh, what's that? Do they have seizures? Now, we understand some people have seizures for various different reasons, but are there seizures that you didn't see before and now you see? So those are concerns about. Are they wetting the lips or having excessive thirst? We call that cotton mouth, by the way. If they're wetting lips and have excessive thirst, that might be another one. Do they have sudden or dramatic weight loss? All of a sudden they lose a lot of weight or gain a lot of weight. Maybe gain a lot of weight from having the munchies, or maybe they're using a drug such as cocaine or something stimulant. They lose a lot of weight. That might be a warning sign that there's some issues going on there. Do they have any abrasions or bruises that are just something you don't explain? It could be from track marks and things like that, that they're using. So those are things to look about. Do they have a lot of accidents or injuries that, some people are accident prone like I am, but do they have any accidents or injuries that maybe aren't normal and natural to them as well? So do they have unusual depression? Maybe they don't have a diagnosed depression, but you're starting to see them become more and more depressed. They're less and less want to be with the family, more and more withdrawal. They don't even want to do things with their friends. That might be a warning sign that something's going on. They have a lot of headaches. That's another thing once again. These are all warning signs, but these are checklists to help you to look at. You can go to the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids and find out more of this information as well. So we're now going to talk a little bit about school. Are they missing a lot of school? Are they not going to school? Are they getting up for school? Or are they not getting up for school? Are they losing interest, in extracurricular activities? Maybe you had an athlete or somebody that's in choir or band or some other activity, and all of a sudden now they don't want to do it anymore. Or they seem less interested in. Now, it might be good if they're doing something that's productive to help them to be more of a better person down the road here to get them ready for college or skills training or something like that. But is it something all of a sudden they're not involved anymore? The hobbies they used to like before, they don't love those anymore. They stay away from those. So are they failing in school? They're not meeting all those obligations that are responsibilities for school. Are their grades going down? Are their grades going down? Are they getting disrespectful to the teacher? Are they sleeping in class? Those are all warning signs that something might be going on. Are they taking drugs to school? Are they vaping at school? Are they using alcohol in school, maybe through a water bottle as an example? They taking marijuana in school? You might think, oh, my son and daughter never do that. You'd be surprised how many teenagers are taking products that I just talked about into schools. I hear time and time again about a lot of schools that are dealing with people that have the vaping issue. And we're all concerned about vaping, but people don't realize it may not be tobacco that they're vaping. They actually could be vaping marijuana, because that is possible. So those are some things to look at. So if you take a look at the home and in your car, do you have... Now, first of all, I want to ask you a quick question here. Do you have medicines around your house? If you do, you might want to lock them up. Because if you don't lock them up, that gives them an opportunity to be able to use those. Maybe not from them, but maybe it's a friend coming over, and a friend says, hey, let's take one of those. I know my other friend told me what it does for me. Well, believe it or not, that friend can influence that other friend. By having those medicines out there, you are having an opportunity for your child to have to deal with that social influence, to have to deal with that person, ask them to do those things. So if you have those things, lock them up. So if you have them laying out and they're not locked up, do you count them? Do you make sure you have all the ones you want? Because believe it or not, there are kids who do take those medicines and they'll sell them, And selling it, man, you're talking thousands of dollars in felonies and things like that can happen because of that. We're also talking about the disappearance of the prescription med because not only will they sell it, but they'll also give it to their friends. And then you got an issue there as well because you're not a pharmacist. Maybe you are because as a parent you might be. I'm not though. And they're not a doctor themselves, so they don't know because that medicine is designed for them, designed to them to help them to be, let's say they had an injury of some sort, or you had an injury, someone in your family had an injury. Lock those medicines up or make sure that you get rid of them when they're not being used anymore. And you could do that for multiple different ways. Number one, in our communities here, there's all sorts of drop boxes, whether it's at Pinconning, Bay County Law Enforcement, whether it's at the new one at Myers, the State Police Post, Saginaw Valley, Delta College. They're all over the place. And if you don't feel you can do that, if you have a cat, and a cat that has bad litter, the nastiest smelling litter, you put that in there, and you open the pill bottle, dump it in there, and you dissolve it, and it'll take care of it. If you have liquid, you put it in a Ziploc baggie and put some flour or cornstarch in there, and then you'll take care of that and get rid of it that way and throw it in the trash. There's lots of opportunities to get rid of that. Do you have any missing alcohol or cigarettes? If you have cigarettes and alcohol around the house, do you know where it is? Do you keep that locked up? Do you have money or valuables missing? Even small amounts of money can be something to be concerned about because that's where it starts. I remember one young man that said that he was using so much cocaine that he ended up selling his Xbox because and this was like 10 years ago, it just was costing him more and more money, and he ended up losing all the things he had bought money or got as gifts. He didn't have that anymore. Are they receiving unusual packages in the mail? So double check those things to make sure that they're not, the package they're getting, are they unusual? People get things like that all the time in the mail. Additionally, there's a smell in the car or bottles, or their pipes or bongs, or is there a glove box, or even what do they call it? Tins that might have things in it. Just because it's tin of Altoids doesn't mean Altoids are in there. By the way, just because it's in the bedroom doesn't necessarily mean it's something in there. Do you look in their shoe? Do you look in their drawers? Yeah, you're a parent. They're probably saying, I can't do that. Their privacy. Why not? Do you want them to be safe? If you are concerned about them, that would be a great step to be a proactive parent. Isn't it better to find out for yourself than find out through the court system or some other way? There's lots of parents that wish they had known what happened ahead of time, and then they would have done some other steps to help their son or daughter along the way, so they didn't end up having to deal with addiction. They didn't end up having to go to prison. They didn't end up having to die. This is what this is all about. We're trying to help people to have the best productive teen they can have, to have the longest living teen they can throughout this process. Do they have seeds left on or services to clean marijuana? Those are all things we're looking at. We're looking at that. So, the appearance of unusual drug apparatuses, including pipes, rolling papers, small medicine bottles, eye drops, butane lighters, or even makeshift smoke devices, like made from bottles and grapefruits and all those different things. If you go on Google and search that, you can probably find tons of information, parents, about how things are being made. You'd be amazed at what some of those things they got. Aluminum foil. Do you notice that where the air vents are or the lights are, there's smudges and things like that? Those are all things. Look for hidden stashes of what's going on there. Whew, you're probably saying, man, that's a big list. That's just a beginning list. And then if you go to that drug-free Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, you can click on it, and each substance has some things you can actually look at. So now let's get into what can we do actually to deal with this issue. There's some strategies we want to talk about. And these strategies are probably really important, and people don't think about these things, and they're pretty interesting. First of all, I want to give you 10 strategies to prevent young person from using drugs. And then we're going to give you 6 practices that will help with parenting practices. And then additionally, I want to give you 3 things that the research shows if you focus on these 3 things, that it will be most efficient and effective for you to have a productive teenager. And then finally, I want to talk about why teens don't use. There's actually some good things you can find out along the way. Number one, preventing teens from preventing, you have to be honest and direct. You have to tell them what your expectations are. And you have to tell them, if you did this, you have to say you made this choice and here's why you decided that it's not a good idea anymore. You have to be very clear about that. You have to be honest and direct. Because if you can't be honest and direct with your kids, whether you're a parent or caregiver, whether you're raising your son or daughter or granddaughter or grandson, if you can't be honest with them, they have a hard time being honest with you. That is so important. And when you're being honest with them and they're being honest with you, there's one thing that all adults have a hard time with, and that is listening. Listen, listen, listen. Second, number 2 strategy, give them praise. There's a book by Ken Blanchard called The 1 Minute Manager, and it has 3 things it does. It has 1 minute goals, 1 minute praising, and 1 minute reprimands. When you end up talking to your teenager about something they did wrong, the bad stuff, try to limit that to 1 minute, by the way, because we know as adults we can go on a tirade and we can go ranting, but focus on one thing you really want to talk about, and then when you're done, give them a 1 minute praise. Tell them what you're excited about for them, what you're happy that they've done. What is some positive things that they have done that'll help them to move forward? They all have some opportunities. One of the things that I always say when I'm going to give a reprimand or something like that to a teenager is I'm a man of faith. So the first thing I do is I pray when I'm going to have a conversation. Because without having that conversation, without praying to me, it just doesn't set the things up. If you don't pray, take a moment of silence before you do that. Because if you don't go do that, have we all said things we didn't mean in the heat of the moment? And I think that's a concern. But 1 minute praisings is so important. Don't be afraid. Number 3, make sure they know the legal consequences of using these drugs. Make sure they know what can happen. If you don't know yourself, do some research. It's important to know what actually can happen. So if you get a minor possession of alcohol now, it's a civil infraction. It's a fine and a 1 class. If you get caught more, it ends up more. Get a possession of marijuana offense, there's other things that happen. So if you're not sure what those are, I encourage you to do research. We could talk more about that, but I want you to do some research. I want you to actually look into these things and see. Talk to other parents. Talk to people at the court system. Look online under the Michigan law and find out what this information says. Number 4, make sure they know the consequences of addiction. Make sure they know what can happen, what addiction looks like. Now, we know that prevention works. We know that treatment is effective. And we know that recovery is possible. But I can tell you right now that the most individuals that I know that in recovery would say they wish they had never started. Because going through the recovery process is a long process, and it takes a lot of time of their life to do that. They're efficient and effective afterwards. They can do some really good things, but we have to know what addiction is. We have to know that addiction, number 1, is a brain disease. We don't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to be an alcoholic, I'm going to have a marijuana problem, I'm going to have a vaping problem. The drugs over time you'll go through a series of different phases according to the program Prime for Life. You'll go through a yellow phase where you're anticipating it, you're looking at it, and then you go through an orange phase where it starts to become the norm, and then you have addiction. They need to understand what addiction looks like and what it means. That it can have life-altering things that can happen to them. Once again, though, I want you to realize that people that have recovered from addiction can also end up being very successful. But I want them to understand what addiction is. It's a brain disease that can change the way their mind and the decisions they make, and those decisions can affect them now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. That's important to understand. If you don't know what addiction is, I encourage you to get more information about addiction and we can have a video down the road here talking more about addiction with one of our partners, Peer 360, to talk more about that from the recovery aspect of it. Number 5, this one I thought was pretty interesting when I was doing some research, is if you have an opportunity, volunteer somewhere where your youth can see the devastation or what happens when people go through those addictions, whether it's going to a homeless shelter, to see what's going on out there. Now, I'm not saying that people, all that have addiction are homeless. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying, they get an idea of what can happen as one aspect of that process when we're looking at addiction. Because most people are not homeless. Most people that have an addiction do not have any major issues. The drug has basically taken over their life. That's what addiction's all about. And I'm going to tell you number 6, do your homework. Get smart about drugs. It's a government website. I encourage you to go look at it. Get smart about drugs. Do your homework. I'm giving you information today, but I want you as a parent to do your own homework. I want you to see the information and get it from reputable sites. I'm giving you a site such as Get Smart About Drugs, which is from the DEA, which has got some great information. All the one I told you about was Partnership for Drug-Free Kids. That also has a lot of good information. It's all research, reliable information, and there's also opportunities to connect with other parents. Now, if you're a parent that's struggling with somebody that has issues with opiate or any kind of drug issue and you need some help and you need support, there's Nar-Anon groups in the area here. And additionally, there is a Families Against Narcotic parent support group that meets the second Thursday of every month at Delta College in Bay City here. And you can go to the Great Lakes Bay Families Against Narcotics Facebook page to see more of that information. Number 7, make one-on-one time. You have to spend time and build a relationship with them for them to be able to listen to you, for them to understand you. Take some time with them. You need to spend the time in the investment, so when you spend that investment now, it's going to pay dividends down the road. Think about your portfolio you have in your job, or if you're saving money as an example. The more you put in, the more you get out of it. The same thing goes here. The more you put into this, the more likely it is to happen, to occur, to find that you will see the productivity, the efficiency, and how much more of a teenager you will be proud of down the road here. When we're having all these discussions, keep cool. Practice deep breathing. Keep calm. You just found out your teenager went out, came out late, they come home and they're smelling like pot. What's your first reaction? Especially if you had the discussion, you want to rip their head off. Not really, but you know where I'm going there. That's where you have to keep your calm and you have to say, okay, we'll talk about this tomorrow morning when we both are in a better, healthy frame of mind. It's really important to keep your calm. I catch myself doing this all the time. I'm not perfect like any other parent, so it's important to keep your cool. Another one that everybody forgets about, in my opinion, number 9, is connecting with other parents. One of the things that I know that parents love is have an opportunity to talk to each other about their experiences and about what's going on, because you're not alone out there. There are many parents that are dealing with the same kind of issue with their teenagers that you are dealing with. And because you're not alone out there, they know, they understand that. In fact, some of them have been there, did that, done that, and they got the t-shirt to prove it. Okay? So talk and connect with other parents. When you are 10, when you're giving information for your teens, give them specific facts of information. Do not use scare tactics. Okay? They do not work on most teenagers because they think it's never going to happen to them. Do not use scare tactics. Use information that is accurate and has some research behind it. And I gave you some sites already. Okay? So those are 10 strategies that can help you to prevent your teen from getting involved in substance use. Even any one of those would help all of those. They're very interdependent of each other when it comes to those things. So now I want to give you 6 parenting practices that will be beneficial, that will help you to reduce the chance your teen will drink alcohol, use drugs, or engage in other risky behaviors. Number 1, build a warm and supportive relationship with your child. That's important. You gotta have a relationship. Without a relationship, nothing changes. Without a relationship, nothing moves forward. Without a relationship, you're going to end up having more problems. So invest the time in building that warm relationship by taking time for your teen, by listening to them, by asking questions. Number 2, be a good role model in your own self. So if you are a person that does drink, make sure you're modeling the appropriate behavior. And we're going to give you a simple one, and it's from Prime for Life. 0 if you have a drug or alcohol addiction. No more than 1 in an hour. No more than 3 on any given occasion, and no more than 2 in any day. Okay? Those are what we're talking about when looking at those things. You need to make sure that you're following some sort of guidelines. We're not told to exercise a little bit. We're told to exercise a certain amount of time. The more specific you can be when you're talking about your behavior, the better off it'll be. And when it comes to taking medicine, take it as directed. Follow it. Don't flush it down the toilet, but get rid of it properly. When it comes to handling stress, if you got a stressed out day, do you end up after the day whining and having alcohol right away or some other kind of substance? Teens and kids watch what we do. I always tell parents, this is the one thing no parent likes to hear, and I'm included that as a parent as well. We're under a microscope every single day when we're doing things. Our teens watch us. Our kids watch us. If they were to take a video of your day, is that what you want them to understand or know about you when they get to be older? Or the video or the information they see in that video, would you want them to see you in that? That's the question we ask ourselves. Number 3, know your child's level of risk. Do you have a family history of alcohol and other substances, including marijuana? The closer the relationship is, the greater the risk. Do you know that? Or is it somebody that's out here more? Instead of close, it's out here more. Or is it further out? Okay, you want to know the level of risk. That's the first thing. We're looking at family history. Number 2, because they're 15 or under or a little bit older than that, they end up having a 4 and 10 times greater risk, just like they do with the family history of end up having a problem because of that. Additionally, thirdly, is there any mental health or any other concerns that may lead them to end up using substances? Do they have any adverse childhood experiences that passed on from generation to generation? They could be the person, by the way, that can help in you helping them to change that generation, to not be involved in the substance use and stop that cycle. Number 4, know your child's friends. I know this is harder than ever now, especially with the internet generation, but the people they're hanging out with the most, you really want to know them, their friends, what their values are, what they believe in, what they think. And here's a neat idea. Have them come to your house. That way you'll know exactly what they're doing. And monitor them along the way when you're doing that. Number 5, monitor, supervise, and set boundaries. By monitoring and seeing what they're doing, you're not being a a narc per se, or a person that's kind of around them all the time, but you're monitoring what they're doing, whether it's their social media, whether it's their discussions, whether it's their phone calls. They may not want to give you the information, but that's where it goes to building that warm and supportive relationship. They'll feel okay with doing that for the most part. Some may not want to, and there are things where you have to have some negotiations, that there's certain things you'll allow as far as not having some information, and there's certain times where they won't have information that you'll be able to get everything at, is what I mean. You have to set some boundaries. What do you expect, and what won't you tolerate? They have to understand what those are, because they can't know what is expected of them if you don't tell them. 6, when looking at these parenting tips, have ongoing conversations and provide information about alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, and other drugs. It doesn't just start in middle school. It should start in elementary, by the way. It should be a continuous discussion you're having, not every single day, but you're having very frequently. Do you have family meetings? If you don't have family meetings, maybe that's an opportunity to do a family meeting and start talking about these things. So you then can mimic what it would be like for them to deal with the social pressure and help them to figure it out along the way. Give them that strategy we talked about. Okay? So, now I want to talk to you about the 3 must things for parents. This is the 3 that, based upon research from the Strengthening Families program, have shown to be most effective. Number 1, you already heard these, but I'm going to tell you them again. Number 1, bonding. The more you bond with your child and develop that relationship, the more likely they are to know, like, and trust you. If they're more likely to know, like, and trust you, they're less likely to do things that are going to break that trust and hurt that relationship. 2, boundaries. They have to know what's expected of them. And 3, monitoring. You have to know what's going on in their lives, because we want them to be the most efficient and most productive team they can. And sometimes we need to know if there's something we need to intervene with. And we're not going to intervene everything. That's not what I'm saying. But we have to have an idea of what's going on so we can help them. We can guide them. We're not going to do it for them. That's the key. We want to do these things for them, but we do want to guide them along the way. So let me talk to you about 5 reasons why teens don't do these things. What I'm going to call protective factors. And I want you to think about, how many of these does your teen have? Number 1, do they have a fear of disappointing you because you develop that relationship, a fear of disappointing you and thinking that, oh man, I don't want to do this, my mom and dad be upset with me, or those kind of things. 2, do they have a healthy beliefs and do they have a clear message? Do they know exactly where you stand on these issues? Do they know what is expected, what you'll tolerate and what you won't tolerate? What to do? So if they're at a party and there's a situation, what do? Do they call you? Do you call them? How does this work? Whatever that decision is, that's what we're talking about. Healthy and beliefs and clear messages. Number 3, positive friends. Are their friends they're hanging out with, are they going to get to where they want to go in the next level? Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to have friends they're going to goof around with, because we all goof around at times. But are those friends that you know are going to help them to make the right choices along the way? Now, you can't choose their friends for them. I want to make that very clear. But you can help them to choose their friends. You're not choosing them for them. They're doing their own friends. Ask them, what qualities do you look for in a good friend? And what qualities won't you stand for in a good friend? And once you do those kind of things, then you can figure out, help them, rephrase that, guide them to actually figure out what friends are the best friends for them. The question I ask some teens sometimes is, what percentage of your teens, is the ones get caught for substance use alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, and other drugs? Well, a lot of times they'll say 75% or 80%. I say, okay, what percentage of those friends do you still associate with today? They'll 75, 80%. I say, well, do you think that's going to help you get where you want to go next? And it gets them starting to think about those things. And then we start talking about what is a healthy friendship to them and what is not a healthy friendship to them. 4, having a purpose. A purpose